Hello and welcome back to Shakesyear. We are working on Sir John Oldcastle and we're going to get to hear from the Bishop of Rochester today in Act 1, Scene 2. So Act 1, Scene 1 was a big battle between Herbert and Powys. Powys being a proto-Protestant, Herbert being a Roman Catholic. We've got a religious battle going on, and all of the law enforcing people, the sheriff, the mayor, the deputies, the bailiffs, all of those people are like, we need to shut this down because this is not good. You know, it's not good to have people fighting in the streets like this. So nobody's allowed to wear weapons. Nobody's allowed to like meet in large groups in public. If people are chatting in a bar, they can't talk religion or politics. Like, let's squash this as quick as we can. So Act 1, Scene 2, we are in the palace at Eltham, and we have the Duke of Suffolk, the Bishop of Rochester, Master Butler, and Sir John, the Parson of Wrotham, who is not Sir John Oldcastle, but Sir John, the Parson of Wrotham. They're in a room in the palace, and Suffolk says to the bishop, he's like, it's okay, you can speak plainly. What do you have to say? And the bishop, on cue, says, "My noble lord, know more than what you know, and have been oftentimes invested with. Grievous complaints have passed between the lips of envious persons to upbraid the clergy. Some carping at the livings which we have, and others burning at the ceremonies that are of ancient custom in the church, amongst the which Lord Cobham is a chief. What inconvenience may proceed hereof, both to the king and to the commonwealth, may easily be discerned, when, like a frenzy, this innovation shall possess their minds. These upstarts will have followers to uphold their damned opinion more than Henry shall to undergo his quarrel against the French." So the Bishop of Rochester is saying, I'm not telling you anything that you don't know. Like, there's nothing really to hide here. It's just people have a lot of complaints against the church, and some of them are about how we live our lives, and some have to do with the actual customs of the church, which is kind of how Protestantism was born. And he mentions that this Lord Cobham, who is Sir John Oldcastle, it's Sir John Oldcastle, Lord of Cobham. He's like, Lord Cobham is one of the prime persons in this sort of uprising. And he's like, this is going to be problematic for the king and for the country, because these people are going to get all of this stuff in their mind, and they're going to rile up an angry mob that's going to have greater numbers than the army we're trying to muster for Henry to go and fight against the French. And this is King Henry V that we're talking about. So Suffolk is like, what sort of proof do you have? And the bishop is like, well, they're calling themselves Protestants and they're meeting in secret. And then a messenger comes in with some letters that he gives to the bishop, and these letters tell the bishop about the fighting that just happened in Hereford. And they mention that this Lord Cobham was sort of the inspiration for the fight. So Suffolk is like, we need to stop. We need to make sure that this stops. I'll tell the king. I'll make sure that the king is in the loop when I see him. And then the bishop tries to give Suffolk some money as like a thank you for all of the stuff that Suffolk has been doing for the church. And Suffolk is like, no, give it to somebody more worthy than that. So then the king, this being King Henry V, comes in with the Earl of Huntingdon, and he asks Suffolk if the church has refused to give money to help the war in France. And Suffolk says yes. And the king's like, but they've been sort of bountiful lately. And Suffolk is like, the church has been generous, and they hope that you're going to still treat them like your royal subjects, because they need some help, like quelling this little uprising that's starting to happen, sort of led by this Cobham guy and the Protestants. And the king is like, I heard that there was like some fighting that happened not too long ago. And he asks if Cobham started it. And the bishop's like, well, not him exactly, but like he's one of the leaders of that movement. So he sort of inspired this fight. And the king is like, well, but how can we arrest him if he didn't do it? And he wasn't really even there. Like, I'm sure all y'all, like while you're at the bar, you probably inspired a fight or two in your day. Does that mean that you should be arrested for that? And Suffolk and the bishop then try to impress upon the king how important it is to try to quell this little uprising, because this little uprising could very quickly become a very big problem. And after a little back and forth, we're going to get to hear the king's thoughts tomorrow on whether or not this uprising needs to be quelled and what we should do with Lord Cobham. So the thing that I think is interesting about this is, one, it feels a little gossipy, but like serious gossipy that happens in court. But also I love it that the church tries to give Suffolk money, and then like immediately after the king comes in, he's like, the church isn't giving us money to go fight a war in France. So just interesting where the church is putting their money and who they're putting their money behind at this point in the play. So just something to think about. But yeah, tomorrow we will get to hear the king's decision on whether or not this little uprising of Protestants needs to be squished or not. So I will see you tomorrow for that. Mwah.